Yeah, you still have to have talent. I mean, I remember when Larry King had a podcast with his wife and all they did was argue. Kathy Lee Gifford had a podcast. Amy Schumer had a podcast. But people think, whoa, everybody knows me and they love me. But you still got to bring value to the audience. You know, you've got to either make them laugh, cry, think, groan, educate, or entertain. And if you're not, there is a name for that, and it's called boring.
Dope is what flows in this fam's DNA. Dope is what flows in this fam's DNA.
What's good, everybody, and welcome to Dope Interviews, brought to you by the mighty 19 Media Group, and I'm your host, Warren Shaw. And in the virtual building today, I have a legend, one of the most influential people in the podcasting space. He's a consultant, speaker, author, also an actual member of the Podcasting Hall of Fame, who is also now the head of podcasting at Pod Page, a site that 19 Media Group utilizes in some capacity. It's the one and only Dave Jackson. Dave, what's good, man? Welcome to Dope Interviews, brother.
Oh, Warren, happy to be here. Looking forward to having some fun.
I appreciate you being here. And again, you're not somebody who needs a whole lot of introduction when it comes to the podcasting space. But for those who may not know you, which I'm sure is not that many, but let's start from the very beginning. You know, your introduction to podcasting, why'd you pick up the mic? Well, like what attracted you about it, you know, when it first started so many years ago?
Yeah, this is back in 2005 when we made, we would chisel podcasts out of stone back in those days. But I'd missed a lot of stuff. Like I'd missed the MySpace boat. Again, kind of dating myself. But this guy came back from an event and said, "You know how you miss MySpace?" He's like, I just saw the next big thing. And I go, "What is it?" And he goes, "It's podcasting." And I went to Google and I typed in podcasting and there was 1.5 pages. And I go, "Wait, how do you spell this?" He's like, "It's POD casting." Like, type it again. There's just nothing on it. And so I had to kind of piece this part one together. And I just remember when I uploaded it and then I saw it come down in this archaic software that I had, I was like, oh, I see how this works. And so I took a blog that I'd been doing for musicians and turned it into a podcast. And within, I don't know, 2 weeks, maybe a month, I got a voicemail from some guy in Nuremberg, Germany. And that's when I went, wait a minute, I just grabbed my flag and I'm like, I claim podcasting in the name of Dave. Because I was in the middle of nowhere, Ohio. And there's like, wait, some dude on the other side of the planet not only found my show, but liked it. And I was like, so it's interesting because like my background's in teaching. So I was like, ooh, we're all going to learn from each other and learn about different cultures. This will be great. So, you give a teacher a podcast, he wants to teach. Give a marketing guy, he's going to want to sell. You have somebody who's a nonprofit, they want to get the word out. So it's always interesting seeing what people will do with the tool. But that's what really got me. When I had somebody on the other side of the planet, I was like, whoa, wait, hold on. This is crazy. Yeah. So that's what sucked me in.
Yeah, I mean, I agree. I think that still rings true, years later, right? I think, you are located wherever you're located and somebody on the other side of the world likes your show, comments on your show, reaches out. And you're like, well, we have fans in Australia. We have fans in Israel or whatever, the Philippines. Like it's a very, very, I think, humbling, but also a very, very fulfilling experience. And to kind of get that feedback. So we won't go through like this whole linear, account of like, your road into everything like that too. So let's fast forward some here. You pick up that mic, you get that feedback. So you've gone in here again, you're a teacher by trade as well too. You started to help people podcast. Do you remember the first show that you started to help and, are you still in contact with them? Is that show still in existence today?
It's not in existence. Oh, it's driving me nuts. Miami Valley Music Cast with I can't remember the guy's name. And I can see his face as clear as a bell. Oh, that's going to drive me nuts. No, but yeah, some of those early people, I still have people and this is a lesson that I learned when I first opened up the School of Podcasting, it was $5 a month and I couldn't get anybody to sign up. And the reason for that was it was $5 a month. And you got to realize, because I was like, man, if I could get, 100 people to give me $5 a month, that would keep me, that'd be a decent chunk of change and blah, blah, blah. And finally, this is where you need good friends to tell you the things that you don't want to hear or maybe you didn't know. And he said, hey, Dave, I saw you're up to $5 a month. And I go, yeah. And he's like, I got a question for you. And I'm like, all right. He goes, can you name me anything else that's worth any kind of value on the internet for $5? And I went, no. And he goes, exactly.
Wow.
And I was like, huh. And it was weird because I had a few people sign up, and those people are still giving me $5 a month. But when I went up, when I went up to like $20, I got more people. But it was weird because I would have people give me money, but they wouldn't do anything. And my business plan was, you'll join the school of podcasting, you'll make a podcast, and people go, wow, how'd you learn how to podcast? And they'll go, oh, you need to go talk to my buddy Dave. And even at $20 a month, I had more people sign up, but they still weren't. I mean, some of them were, but there are a lot of people who just give me $20 for nothing. And as much as that's okay, but I was like, I kind of wanted you to make a podcast. So when I eventually went up to 49, that's when you had people like, oh, all right, well, I need to do something with this because I'm putting out $49 a month. But it was interesting going from 5 to 49 to where people finally started, going through it. And it's weird because you think, oh, if I keep my price low, I'll be like the Walmart of podcasting. And in the end, I don't think you want to be the Walmart of anything. Not the best brand at times,
Yeah.
And but yeah, and so I didn't know what I was doing. I'd never done anything like this. And it was just a case where I had different opportunities that had come by, and I was like, oh, I should do that. And then I didn't. And then, 9 months later, you're like, oh, I could have got in on the ground floor. And so when this came along, I was like, all right, I'm not letting another thing jump by. And at the time they were saying membership sites and podcasting were going to be the next two big things. And I was like, well, let's Reese pieces this together. What if I make a membership site about podcasting? And it was brutal the first couple of years because you're talking 2005. There was no iPhone. There was no Apple yet, and I'd be asking people, do you listen to podcasts? They're like, do I need an iPod for that? And I'm like, nope, just the internet and some speakers, and I'd finally explain what a podcast was. And they'd be like, yeah, I don't want to do that.
Yeah.
So the first couple of years I was still doing web design. I was playing in a band. I was giving guitar lessons. I was doing anything to make ends meet.
That's a great story. I think it goes back to, I work in higher education, ironically. And sometimes when we do programs, we'll just give it to the students for free. But then like, there's literally no buying, like they need to have skin in the game and some capacity for them to actually show up. And that kind of seems to be a business model that is tried and true in a lot of ways. Yeah. You don't want to even undersell your own self, in that. So obviously had a lot of success. What was it like being inducted into the Hall of Fame? So for this thing that you were Googling first, 20 plus years ago or whatever, and it's like, all right, there's not that many search results, to now actually being in the Hall of Fame for it. What was that call like, that whole ceremony? Did you get a jacket? Kind of like, what's the situation?
Yeah, it's weird because a friend of mine, Gary Leland, who is also in the Hall of Fame, was kind of helped running it at the time. And I forget what the deal was the year before, but he had called me. And then this year he called me again and he said, hey, we need you to, the year before I helped induct somebody into the Hall of Fame because I was a big fan of Dan Class. And so he calls me the next year and I'm thinking he wants me to induct another person. And he said, we're going to need some help with the induction ceremony. And I'm like, okay. And he's like, and we're going to need you to pick up a trophy this time. And I was like, what? And he's like, yeah, you're getting inducted to the Hall of Fame. And it's hard to make Dave Jackson speechless, but that worked. And it was like, because I mean, I heard you, it was a very nice introduction and you're like, everybody knows this guy. That just doesn't compute in my brain. In fact, I was at an event once and somebody said, oh, Dave Jackson's here. And the friend of mine was running the thing. And he's like, no, man. He goes, that's the Dave Jackson. And it became like this weird like nickname. And I'm like, I don't know what that means. And I've had friends of mine that have said, you don't get it. And I'm like, what? And they're like, you're Dave Jackson. And I'm like, yeah, what does like, so, and they're like, no, everybody knows who you are. And I'm like, no, I don't think so, because I can walk down the hall and, it's no big deal. But yeah, it really messed with my head when I got back to recording. Like everything I record, I'm like, is this Hall of Fame worthy? And it took me like a day or two to kind of go, wait a minute, I got inducted being myself. I just need to keep being myself because that's what got me here. And I kind of got over that. But it like the first day back, I was like, wait, and it messed with my head.
Let me ask you this from this lens, right? So it's very easy for that exactly to happen, for the things to kind of get into your head. But then you have the school of podcasting. Is it, do you see like a number spike after something like that? Because like you're already known in your own right, and now you have yet another accolade, which can be in a lot of ways the highest accolade in the field, so to speak. Did that give you like another boost, for what you were trying to do in the school?
It's funny because that was back in 2018. And I can't remember if there was or wasn't. The big thing that gives me a boost is January. Every January, everybody and their brother says, I'm starting a podcast this year. And what's funny is, this is why I always say you have to figure out, like, how are you going to measure your success? What do you want the podcast to do? Because if I measured my success in downloads in February, I'd be, ready to jump out of a window, because my numbers, like every gym membership in America, are going down, right? Everybody thought they were going to do this, but now they've decided not to. So my downloads are going down. But the people that did listen in January, some of them decided they're going to start a podcast. So my membership is going up as my numbers are going down. And so I base my success on how many new members I get. So in February, I'm ecstatic, even though my numbers are actually going down. So you have to kind of know, what are you going to measure this with? Because if you don't, you have to know your why, because if you don't get your why, you burn out. And then that means you have to know how you're going to measure your success. So yeah, it's tricky.
Yeah, very, very, very. We're chatting here with Dave Jackson. Make sure you can follow him on socials at School of Podcasting, or one of his other gigs here now, I guess, with the Pod Page at Pod Page HQ. Let's take a quick break here and Dope Interviews, y'all. We'll be right back. Basketball season is heating up, and PrizePicks is the best place to get real money action while watching your favorite sports. You can now win up to 1,000 times your money on PrizePicks. Sign up today and get $50 instantly when you play $5. You don't even need to win to receive the $50 bonus. It's guaranteed when you use the promo code CLNS. PrizePicks also offers weekly promotions that can lead to big payouts and is available in more than 30 states, including California, Texas, Georgia, and my home state of Florida. Due to the enormous selection of players and stat types available, you can mix and match your playing strategies based on your personal preferences. I'm a Celtics guy, so I might take Tatum for more than 27 points, and maybe I'll rock with Porzingis for more than 2 blocks. And for those who love a quick win, PrizePicks is the way to go. You can make your picks and submit your entry in less than 60 seconds. So what are you waiting for? Download the app today and use the code CLNS to get $50 instantly after you play your first $5 lineup. Remember, with PrizePicks, it's as simple as picking more or picking less. Again, that's promo code CLNS to get $50 after you play your first $5 lineup. PrizePicks, run your game. And we're back here in Dope Interviews with Dave Jackson. Dave, so before we're talking a little bit about, the path to kind of where you are here now, and to kind of maybe close a loop on that a little bit. You spent some time with some different hosting platforms and now landed at Pod Page. Can you tell us a little bit about your path, not necessarily just working with people, but again, working with podcasting organizations, and what led you to Pod Page? Yeah, this always sounds like humble brag theater, and I don't mean it to sound like that, but this actually happened. There was a big event before PodFest and before Podcast Movement. There was this thing called the New Media Expo, and the guy that was running the podcasting track had left. And so the head of the New Media Expo called Spreaker, Libsyn, and Blueberry and said, who do you think we should get to head up the podcast track? And they all said Dave Jackson. And so he finally called me. He's like, I'm tired of talking to people to say I should hire you. I'm just going to call you up. And so that kind of led to that. But through the years, I had interviewed people from Blueberry and Spreaker and Libsyn. And actually, for 8 years, I worked at Libsyn with Rob Walsh. I was the head of podcast education over there. And nothing against Libsyn. I love the people over there. But PodPage it was a better fit for my skill set. So I was doing some marketing at Libsyn and I was doing tech support at PodPage. I'm just doing more, a lot of documentation. I'm making YouTube videos. There's just everything they mentioned was like, hey, would you like to do this? And I was like, yes, I would, please. And so I came over last July and have been loving it ever since. But it's again where I had been hired by Brendan back in 2020 when he was launching PodPage because he needed a podcast consultant to say, hey, is this a good idea? And I was like, well, we need a contact page and about page in our episodes. And he came back in like a week and was like this?
And I was like, oh, that's cool. Can it integrate with Patreon? And he came back in about a week and said, like this. And so over the years, I just been feeding him ideas because he knew I would let him know, hey, that's cool, or nobody was going to really care about that. So I was giving him honest feedback. And so he just happened to reach out and was like, hey, how's everything going over at Libsyn? And I was like, it's okay. It's like I'm doing my thing. I got promoted. And that was the problem. I'd been promoted into positions where I was working less and less with podcasters and more with like the head of marketing, not really people behind the microphone.
Bureaucracy. Yeah.
Yeah. And so when he offered that up, I was like, yeah, I think I'm going to take that. And my brother's like, wait, you're leaving a company that has like 30 to 50 people in it to, this really small company. And I'm like, yeah, but it's more fun. And the other thing I found, it was kind of interesting, is once I moved, I had a bunch of companies reach out and they said, had we knew
You're available.
looking, we would have snagged you. And I was like, well, I wasn't really looking. It was just a case where Brendan reached out. It's like, hey, I got this thing. Do you want it? And I was like, yes, actually I do. So, and I've been there, and it's, the thing I love about it, it reminds me a little bit of Libsyn when I was, brand new. And that is, if you get an idea, Brendan's the developer and the CEO, and he can just basically a couple days, just whip it up. I remember we went to Podfest and somebody said, hey, you have all these cool pre-made links // follow and /voicemail and /contact. And like, how come there's no /newsletter? And I'm like, surely we have a /newsletter. And I looked and I'm like, yeah, we don't. And so I texted Brendan. I go, we don't have a /newsletter. He's like, really? And I'm like, no, we don't. He's like, all right. And probably, I don't know, a week or two, we had that feature. So we're always listening to our customers. And somebody came up with an idea yesterday, and I was like, we have a cool thing where you can just drag and drop where things end up on your homepage. And then there's a special section for the sidebar. And they're like, oh, it'd be cool if we could drag and drop like we do on the homepage in the sidebar. And I was like, that's a really good idea. And so I'm going to feed that to Brennan, and, probably in a month or two, we'll be like, all right, here it is. So we're always open to making it better.
No, I mean, so I'll tell you how I got introduced, I think it was during the NBA playoffs, ironically. And, Brendan I think he was doing some almost like, if you understand kind of old school rap, like kind of like selling like his tapes out the back of the trunk, he was just on Twitter like, hey, I can build you a page in 5 minutes or 10 minutes.
Yeah.
And, so some people are like, yeah, bullshit, right? And he's like, no, send me your logo. So I saw a couple people do it. A couple friends of mine did it. So I was like, all right, what do I got to lose? It doesn't seem scammy. Let me just try to look. And literally he built the page like in whatever it was, 10 minutes, and said, hey, this is a free page. And this is, this is yours. And hey, if you want more information, here's how we can get in contact. And it's a tactic that may or may not always work, but it definitely worked in this situation. And now he has a business, years later, and has you, guiding him, if you will, as a head of podcasting. So for those who may not know, as we're just kind of talking about it, like seasoned veterans, if you will, too, what is like the ideation of Pod Page, and why should every podcast have one?
Yeah, well, first things first, you need a website. And I don't mean like a link tree, link in bio kind of thing. You need SEO to be found. And everybody's like, well, isn't SEO going out the door because of AI? And I'm like, yeah, but what's AI using behind the scenes? They're using your website and rankings and all that. So you still need to do that. And PodPage has a great idea. It was actually built a lot like I recommend people build a podcast, which is find out who your audience is, find out what they want, and give it to them. And so the audience is, hey, I'm a podcaster and I need a great looking website, but I don't want to learn how to code. And so that's what it does. It basically pulls your RSS feed in from whoever you're hosting with, whether it's Spotify or Buzzsprout or Captivate or whoever will work with anybody. And it pulls that information in. And from there, you just go in and set your colors. You pick a layout, maybe add a couple images for your header and such, and you're pretty much done. And then from there, it's just a matter of what do you want it to do? You can add custom pages where other systems are kind of stuck with, well, here's what you got. If you want to color outside the lines, you can't. Now with Pod Page, you can add custom pages. And if you're like, well, all right, but I have a newsletter. Great. Who is it with? It doesn't matter. If it's Aweber, Constant Contact, MailChimp, you just grab their form and copy and paste it into Pod Page. So like the most geeky thing you'll do is copy and paste. Like copy and paste. And so what if I'm using Supercast or Patreon or buy me a coffee. Yep, we integrate with all that. Okay, well, I also have videos. We integrate with YouTube. Okay, well, and then anything that people needed, like a guest intake form. Like if you're doing guests, you can send your guest a form. They fill out all their information. They have their bio and their headshot and all that. And then when the episode comes out, you can easily take that information that the guest has put in and just attach it to the episode. And so you throw in things like we also integrate with Apple Podcasts, so you can bring in your reviews. And it's just a matter of we are in our lane. We build websites for people that don't want to build websites. But all the other stuff, like we don't want to be a media host because, how are we going to be better than Buzzsprout or Libsyn or who, like they're already doing the good thing. We'll just integrate with them. Mm-hmm. And so we do what we do best. And then we offer great support and we offer it at an affordable price and, off you go.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. Again, like so the baseline is on there and, having you and Brendan kind of at the helm there's a lot of great features. And obviously you've mentioned many of those features there. Is there one more, maybe that you haven't mentioned yet that you feel is kind of maybe an underrated situation that many users or people who run on the platform may not even be utilized? Like, hey, why aren't people utilizing this more?
Yeah, we added it about 4 months ago, and it's based off this book. It's The Audience is Listening by Tom Webster. The tagline, A Little Guide to Building a Big Podcast. And Tom has worked with audio audiences for decades. He used to work with the Howard Stern show and do surveys of them. And as I was reading the book, there are just all these great questions because the whole point is like, hey, I wonder if my audience likes my show. Here's a novel idea. Ask them. You know what I mean? And so I was reading the book and Brendan said, hey, I think I'm going to build an audience survey. And I go, oh, we got to reach out to Tom Webster because he's already done the work. And so we said, hey, Tom, can we use some of the questions out of this book? And Tom said, can you put a link to my book? And we're like, yes. And he's like, yes, you can. So you've basically got these great questions in there and you just pick the ones you want. And then we always try to make it easy and we try to make it reinforce your brand. So if you go to yourwebsite.com/survey, that will be the survey based on the questions that you picked. And I'm not quite sure, like people use that and they're learning great things. Like I learned personally that I was hanging out on Facebook and Twitter and most of my audience is on LinkedIn. And I was like, oh, I'm barking up the wrong tree here. My audience is over there. So you can learn about your audience. So what's working. I have fun with that because I can see other people's surveys. And there was one that was a daily show. And that person got a lot of feedback saying, you're feeding me with a fire hose. I can't, can we kind of tame it down or shorten it up or something? And so that is one that I'm surprised more people aren't doing. And I think part of it is we're just afraid to put it out there because we just assume everybody's just gonna, just crap all over it. And it's like, no, they're going to tell you what you're doing right, but they're also going to tell you if there's something that needs a little improvement. So that's one I would definitely recommend checking out.
Yeah, well, you're giving me some insight here for myself for sure. And I think a lot of podcasting is about getting out of your own way and getting out of the fear. We have a lot of people come to our network and it's like, all right, just like I've heard you even say, you just got to press record. Like you just got to get going and your first one is going to suck and you have to be okay with that. But some people just, again, they kind of get in their way. Hence why you probably have people sign up and then they don't actually ever do anything. One more question before we go to break about Pod Page specifically is there kind of an enterprise feature or something that might be on the horizon? So like, again, 19 Media Group is a network that has multiple pages kind of underneath it. But right now, my understanding of Pod Page is kind of like podcast specific. Is there an enterprise or network feature coming or something that's maybe I don't even know about currently?
We have a network feature now, and its primary purpose is to go, and here are all of our sites. Mm-hmm. But we always tell people you get a domain for the network, but if you then want to point a domain at each individual show, that currently is not available. So it's probably something later, like fourth quarter this year, we're going to look at. Because we realize that a lot of people are like, oh, that's great, but I need a domain for each show, or I want to do this, and so we've kind of just set it up again based on audience feedback. Right. And somebody said, I just need a place to show all my shows. I don't really need all this fancy stuff, and so that's what it was based on. But now we're having people like, wait, can we get how do we get this on a network to do this stuff? So it's definitely one of those things that we are aware of. And like I say, probably by the end of the year, we'll have a new version of that.
Sounds amazing. We're chatting with Dave Jackson here, Iron Dope Interviews. Let's take another quick break, y'all. We'll be right back. And we're back here in Dope Interviews with my guy, Dave Jackson. Make sure you're following, his new company, if you will, Pod Page at Pod Page HQ on social media. Dave, so as we're kind of closing out, I'd be remiss if I didn't ask you about some of your thoughts. And you've given so many nuggets here throughout the course of this interview. But what is one shift in podcasting that you're excited about? Something that you're like, man, you know what? This is pretty cool. Or maybe even has you raising an eyebrow a little bit.
Well, there are a couple. I'm excited that just every year, the number of people that are consuming podcasts goes up, like every year, never goes down. And so that's the part I like. The part that I get the eyebrow raise is when YouTube came out, and I think it's a coincidence, maybe, that about the time TikTok started eating some of its advertising, YouTube came out and was like, hey, everybody on YouTube, and they kind of waved their magic wand and said, you are now a podcaster. And I'm like, because again, my nerdy side, I know the back end of a podcast. They go, that's not what makes somebody a podcast. You got to have an RSS feed and you have open syndication. And that is the direct opposite of YouTube. So I find it confusing. And this is the only thing I hate about it, because everybody's like, you're an old curmudgeon. Who cares what we call it? Because I'll be like, YouTube is not really a podcast. And they're like, old curmudgeon. And I'm like, but here's what drives me nuts about it. There was just some reports that came out, and they're like, hey, podcasts, the number one place to discover a podcast is YouTube. And I go, well, yeah, because we just said all YouTubers are podcasts. So it's kind of like when people say, country music is now the number one genre. And I go, yeah, have you heard country? It's AC/DC with a banjo. I'm like, that's not country music. I grew up with country, and so that's the part. And the only reason I remotely care is everybody now is saying you have to do video, not you should. It's you have to. And I have people come up to me. They're like, yeah, I want to start this podcast. And they'll give me the idea. And I'm like, man, that sounds brilliant. Like, what's stopping you? And they go, I don't want to do video. And I go, you don't have to do video. And they go, no, everybody said I had to do video. I go, nope, there's no podcast police. They're like, if you don't want to do video, you don't have to. And I go, audio outperforms video 15-1. And they're like, what? And I go, yeah. I go, because there's more opportunities to listen. I can't, watch your YouTube while I'm driving to work the next day or doing the dishes or walking the dog. I go, but I can listen. I go, podcasts are a great thing to do when your eyes and hands are busy. I said, so there's more opportunity. Now, if you have the time and the budget and the desire to be on YouTube, you'd be stupid not to be on YouTube. But I just hate when I see people that like, yeah, I'm not going to do anything. Why? Because I don't want to do video. I'm like, don't do video then. You can just be audio. You're okay with that.
And it's interesting because, even at the conference where I, didn't see you at, but saw that you were there at PodFest, every other session was about video and or AI, right? And I think just how you have to. But it's interesting to see because I don't think you're an old curmudgeon in any way, shape, or form. I just think, there's the aspect of like everybody wants to be new age and whatever's hot now, like this is the thing and this is the wave you have to ride. But I want to go ahead. I'm sorry.
Well, the thing with AI is everybody wants to be a thought leader by using AI, where it will literally give you the same thing. And you have to be very careful. I've at least 5 times now had something that AI came out and like where it's recommending Google Podcasts. And I'm like, yeah, that's been dead for about 8 months now. Yeah. And had I copied and pasted that, there goes my integrity out the window. Yeah. So I love the fact that everybody wants to be a thought leader by using a tool that's using everybody else's thoughts. And I'm like, wait, how are you a thought leader with that? So that's just a head scratcher.
No, for real. What are your thoughts, if any, on the influx of celebrity podcasting in general? Like, so I live in the basketball space a lot, and all the athletes, all the former players, any guys who even played 5 minutes a game, like they have a podcast now. God bless them. But everybody's biting at this apple right now. Your thought on that, and is it sustainable for kind of the normal individual who wants to pick up the mic?
Yeah, you still have to have talent. I remember when Larry King had a podcast with his wife and all they did was argue. Kathy Lee Gifford had a podcast. Amy Schumer had a podcast. And they all thought, well, I'm Amy Schumer. And to her credit, she was also like 8 months pregnant, so I'm going to give her a pass. But people think, well, everybody knows me and they love me, but you still got to bring value to the audience. You've got to either make them laugh, cry, think, groan, educate, or entertain. And if you're not, there is a name for that, and it's called boring. And there are only 8 million other shows to pick from. So why would I listen to yours? So I know I've heard a bunch of people like, and it kind of depends on what you want. Like I listen to Amy, not Amy Schumer, Amy Poehler has a new show, and I like Amy Poehler, but it's just her talking to her celebrity friends. And there are times when I'm like, okay, would I keep listening if this person wasn't talking to another celebrity? Because they're talking about the good old days, about a club I've never heard of, about something and I don't, it's just, it's like way too inside baseball. And I'm like, I think I'm out. But other people will hear that same show and go, oh, that's a great show. I love to put it on the background and just relax. So, it's one of those things where I have my idea of what makes a good podcast, and that may or may not match yours. But I just know celebrity podcasts, there are a lot of them, and it's a way to get your name back out there. And hopefully somebody will be like, oh, I remember that guy. And then they're going to maybe put you in a TV show or whatever. But you still have to, come in and deliver some sort of value. Otherwise, the audience isn't going to stick around.
Yeah. I mean, I actually think, I shouldn't say actually, but I think like Jason Bateman and his show, Smart List or whatever, is very similar. Right? They talk to a bunch of other celebrities and friends, and they learn a lot, I guess, through some other celebrities because some they don't all know them, but it has garnered that. And for me, it feels like the celebrity wave is more of a money grab for the celebrities and the athletes than it is about the storytelling aspect of podcasting.
Well, yeah. And like, she played Blossom in the early days, and then she was on The Big Bang Theory, Mayim Blalik or something like that. And I'm watching her show, and the first 15 minutes, like every, 5 minutes they're breaking for ads. Or Conan O'Brien. I like him as an interviewer, but he should change his show from Conan O'Brien Needs a Friend to Conan O'Brien Needs Some Cash. Because I'm like, even his short videos on YouTube, he's like, it's one question and one answer, and he's got to stop in the middle of the answer to talk about some service that I don't care about. I'm like, geez, didn't you get paid like 33 million for something on Sirius? I'm like, dude, what's up with that? But it's yay democracy and capitalism. So who am I?
Tell the truth, Dave. Tell the truth. I hear you here. Last few before I let you ride out. So obviously you've seen so many podcasts in your time. What is, if you can remember, like, or think of like, kind of like, what's the strangest one, in terms of a niche that you saw kind of be successful?
Yeah. It was interesting. I interviewed him on my show, and the name of the show was Chameleon Breeding. And I go, wait, did you say chameleon breeding? He's like, yeah. And I go, like little lizards that change colors? And he's like, yeah. And I'm like, okay. I go, what are you talking about? He goes, I talk about breeding chameleons. And I was like, okay. Wow. But the thing was, he built cages for these. And I was like, oh, cool. And he goes, well, I have a problem. He goes, because I have a company that makes the cage. And they were kind of like, hey, can you kind of like back down on mentioning the cages so much, because we can't keep up. He's like, so I'm going to quit doing that. I said, no, my friend, that is called proof of concept. I go, you need a different manufacturer or an additional one. And he said, what was interesting, he had his audience said, we can buy these cages cheaper from overseas, but we want to buy them from you because you've given us, topics in value, and you've helped educate us. So they want to give back. And that's the good old law of reciprocity. But that was one that I was like, your show is what? So, it's very niche and it's working. And that's a guy that, doesn't have 10,000 downloads an episode, but it's doing exactly what he wants it to do, which is drive sales of cages.
I love it. To me, it's a little like I watch Shark Tank sometimes and I'm like, that's a business. And I'm not trying to be disparaging. It's just like, people pay for that. And so like there literally is something for everybody. And so I think that is unique. You pull one out of the hat there, because I'm not one who's off the species as well too, but chameleon breeding, not something I even would have thought is something that people do out there. That's
yeah. Yeah.
Well, Dave, is there anything else before I let you get out of here, that you want to say about what you do at School of Podcasting, or just kind of in general with Pod Page, that might be helpful, or a tip for podcasters or anybody who might be listening to our show here today?
Yeah, well, with the School of Podcasting, if you've been thinking about it for a while about starting a podcast, just realize that there is an audience that will listen to you. I know a lot of people like, who would listen to me? And my favorite example of that was when Garth Brooks was playing, the country singer. He was playing Central Park in New York City, and he was convinced there was nobody there. And finally, his manager came in, and he said, "There's nobody out there, is there? Because I'm a country boy in the big city." And they're like, "Garth, they had to move the barricades." And he's like, "I told you, there's nobody here." And it's like, "No, there are 860,000 people here." And he's like, "What?" And he's like, and Garth is like, "You're telling me there's 860,000 people out there?" He's like, "No, I'm telling you there are 860,000 people out there 20 minutes ago." And by the time he went on stage, it was almost 1 million. So, we all have imposter syndrome. And as for Podpage, if you go to podpage.com/preview, you can see what your site would look like if you got one, and play with it for 2 weeks. And if you like it, you basically upgrade and pay for it and keep it. Or if you don't, you go, "Yeah, this isn't for me." But we just know that most people that see it go, "Oh man, this is so much cooler than my website." So you can check that out at podpage.com/preview.
Sounds like an amazing place to kind of wrap up here, Dave. I want to thank you for spending your time here with me and giving some insight to our listeners here on Dope Interviews. Make sure you can follow the great Dave Jackson over at School of Podcasting. Follow his new adventure over there at Podpage at PodpageHQ, podpage.com, as he just alluded to. And congratulations on all your success and all your future success, my brother. It's really been an amazing chance to have this conversation with you, Dave.
Oh, thanks, man. It's been an honor to be here.
I appreciate you. Again, I'm Warren Shaw. You can follow me at dope_interviews. You can follow me at Shaw Sports NBA for my basketball content as well. And make sure you follow 19 Media Group, the great, mighty 19 Media Group. You know what it's been, y'all. It's been another Dope Interviews, y'all, and we're out.
Together we stand, divided we never. The vision is one, striving for the better. Working as a team, working toward a dream. It's not even work when the team is the dream. On a united front, we got our own back. A band of brothers to counteract any attack. One heart in fact, forget what the blood say. Dope is what flows in this fam's DNA. So let's do it for the love, give to the max. Listen to opinion, but react to facts. And remember that together with a but separate, just pieces of it. Dope is what flows in this fam's DNA. Dope is what flows in this fam's DNA.
Family represent like a tree with names on it. We're free, no chains on it. Relieved, the pain's gone, I can see. We come together like questions on the quiz. Mojo Flow and Viz, man, you know what it is. And if ignorance is bliss, you're gonna hate this lesson. Organized intellect like a tropical depression. My symbol is the cross, a mic and ghost peppers. Cause I'm just a black sheep growing up to be a shepherd. Moonlighting as a weapon to protect the children. Every brother is a father, dynasties we're building. Max, J and K, Bay, and Isaiah, next level of the family foundation. Understand me?